You are watching The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, your escape to reality.
Everyone, welcome to our Friday streaming thing. It's been quite a week since the last time we did this.
Yeah, what a hell of a week, huh?
Oh my
So,
goodness.
Steve, I want to say hello. We got a lot of hellos from people from Canada, UK, Colorado, Texas, Romania, Ecuador, Washington State, UK, Temecula, California, New Zealand, Germany, and my favorite, Middle Earth.
Middle Earth, yeah.
And where's everyone else? Oh, they're working.
Where
away.
in Middle Earth? I mean, we're talking about Gondor.
I know, right?
Rohan,
Rohan. I mean, come on.
Esquire of Rohan.
So we're still dealing with the fallout from the murder of George Floyd, which has been, for me, it's always positive and negative. Like you watch the horrible things people do, and you watch the fantastic things that people do, and you realize that that's humanity, right? I mean, there are people who are going out there and marching for to protest, trying to make the world a better place, and then there are other people just doing horrible things and saying stupid shit,
and then getting sprayed with rubber bullets and tear gas.
Yeah. And then the assault on reality continues. I mean, so just today, we're sort of dealing with evolving stories and sort of debunking conspiracy theories in real time. Evan, you sent me that thing about, so there was a thing about Lafayette Square, right, where the story is just like, you couldn't write this, people were, I've heard peacefully, I've heard mostly peacefully, but the evidence that I've seen suggests they were basically peacefully protesting in Lafayette Square. The president,
and to be clear, sorry to interject, Steve.
Yeah, go ahead.
Square is next, for people who aren't from the
right,
U.S.
yeah.
It's right next to the White House. It's a square right next to it.
Yeah, Trump decided he wanted a photo op at the church across the street, so he ordered basically them to be cleared, and they were cleared using tear gas and smoke bombs and force,
and rubber bullet. And
rubber bullets. Yeah.
Did they use rubber bullets in that particular case?
I think they used like a pepper bullets.
Yeah. No. So
it depends. It depends who you listen to, right?
That's what Steve's talking about.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about, right? So there are people saying that the president said that they did not use tear gas. That's just the media, the lefty media lying about me. But here's very, very quickly, here's the reality. They used a pepper-based form of tear gas, right? Now you can technically argue about whether or not that should be called tear gas, but the effects are indistinguishable from any other form of tear gas.
Right, and I believe, Steve, the CDC characterizes it as tear gas, classifies it as tear gas.
Yes.
Yeah, as a riot control agent, aka tear gas.
Yeah, it's a chemical irritant dispersed in a gas that causes tearing. Hello. And
vomiting,
among other
coughing,
things.
Vomiting and coughing.
Yeah,
it's meant to irritate your mucus membrane. So it's
awesome for during a pandemic. Just like gassing people and making them puke and cough in the street.
Very good.
The White House literally said it's not tear gas because it's natural, and tear gas is synthetic.
What?
They did the whole appeal to nature thing because it's a pepper irritant. Yeah, ghost peppers are natural too. Eat those.
Yeah, right.
We'll see how irritated you are from those. So that was just ridiculous. But just the idea that you're going to sort of parlay this technical distinction without a difference to make it seem like the other side's lying when in fact you're lying. That's
to make it seem like you didn't violate the Geneva Convention.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and that's really what it was, right? It wasn't just like, oh no, we didn't do it. It was like, this has massive ramifications if we did do it.
They did
like,
do it.
This is, which they did. But this is, these are war crimes being committed towards their own citizens. And right now it's actually really interesting when you look at the White House, because it's like a highly militarized zone. I mean, there's a lot of commentary coming out of a lot of major newspapers. But you're seeing it on Twitter. You're seeing chatter and things, in developing news. But I'm also reading a lot of commentary in the Washington Post, in the Wall Street Journal, in the New York Times about the kind of similarities between how fortified the White House is, which is supposed to be the people's house, right? Historically has always been, and strongman bunkers. It's very. I mean, the National Guard is standing there. There are big fences and concrete barriers that have been put up. It's pretty intense.
Don't forget the dogs and the what kind of weapons did he say they were? Ominous?
Oh, bayonets.
No. He
described the weapons.
Yeah, as ominous weapons.
Ominous, okay.
Ominous, okay, sure.
Yeah. So, this is something that just blows my mind. So, a quick summary: a black man gets killed, seemingly deliberate, by one or more police officers, which I consider, to be murder. He was murdered.
He's indicted for murder now, so that's what's happening.
And one of, by the way, many. Just this one is the one that tipped the scales. But
So then, nobody's shocked. Everybody in the United States, or not everyone, but a lot of people, most I'd like to think, really get freaked out and pissed off by this. Tons of people are protesting. It's clearly a problem the police have, not only with the violence that the police are using, which they should, not all police, of course. I'm just talking about a portion of the police, and I have no idea what the percentage is, but a portion of the police are using, very, very inappropriate violence and behavior that can hurt or kill people because, reality, because that's what we see here. People are protesting, and then where's our government? Where's the U.S. government saying, hey, we hear you, this is a problem, and we're going to deal with it?
They're not. They're, of course, siding with militarized police.
Right, but isn't that so obvious that that's what needs to happen? Like, I was talking to someone about, like, you look at the people in Hong Kong, that their stability of their life is being slowly washed away from under their feet. And these people are struggling to stop their government from turning their lives into a communist lifestyle. Which
totalitarian.
It's not supposed to be happening right now. But in the United States, that we live in, which is supposed to, live free, blah blah blah, we can't even get our president to stand up and say to everybody, "Hey, I hear you. You're right. There's a problem. We've got to stop it." We get nothing out of the White House.
Of course not. I mean, he was never going to be a defender of the people. But I mean, I think one point that needs to be made really clear, and whether you agree with me or not, I'm going to say this is true. But, when we look at the historic foundation of the police force in this country, and I think I get why you say, Jay, and not all police, I get why you want to hedge. And this is a very common thing that people do when we're talking about this, is like walking on eggshells. And yeah, of course, there are plenty of police officers who don't brutalize people, but there's a system of silence, of reinforcement. I mean, if you look at the elderly man who was pushed down by the police in the street, bleeding from his head, near death, 56 cops just resigned in protest because two of those guys.
Really? I didn't hear that.
Yes.
And Karen, but isn't that the kicker, though? Isn't that the kicker?
This is a systemic problem. This is not just about a couple bad apples.
I know. In response to a man being murdered, more people are being beaten up and
well, and that's the irony, right? Is like, in what logical universe? And I mean, let's come back to reason and critical thinking and logic. When brutality is called out, that the right answer is to double down with more brutality. And that's what we're seeing across the board. And let's again be clear, in marginalized communities, this has been happening for centuries. And when nothing is new now except for the fact that everybody has a cell phone, and that because there are blackout movements on social media where individuals like myself are saying, I'm not an expert in this. So it's my job to amplify Black voices, and it's my job to try and retweet and post and draw attention to what's happening. We're now seeing that the real atrocities are being elevated to the top of the news feed when before they were buried. I mean, that's the only difference right now, is that we're seeing it first thing. You and me and, a lot of the people listening to this show have not had to deal with this when we walk out of our homes, or even when we're sleeping in our own beds like Breonna Taylor. We're not at risk of being killed by the police on a regular basis, but a certain percentage of our populace is, and that's
it's terrible. So, Kara, since you brought up the 75-year-old gentleman who was protesting, who was pushed down, Evan, you sent this out to us. This is a conspiracy theory that's going around social media.
Oh, no way.
Oh, it totally pisses me off, this kind of thing. It took me about 5 minutes to completely deconstruct this conspiracy theory. But fortunately, again, as you say, Kara, because it's on camera, but not only from one angle, multiple angles, multiple different cameras. And when you put it all together. So what happened was, this guy is obviously somebody who is very socially active and does protest and whatever. And he was, this is in Buffalo, New York, at a protest, and standing his ground before the cops, and he gets pushed backwards, and he falls backwards, and and then in the one video, you could see it all happen. Then he falls backward out of frame, but then the camera quickly recenters him. He's laying on his back, his head's on the pavement, and there's blood coming out of his right ear, and the guy is awake for a couple of seconds and then slowly goes limp.
Yeah, he's not moving at all.
That he's not moving, yeah.
Yeah.
So now the conspiracy theory, which is just like people making shit up, right? But it is, they're anomaly hunting, and I know this makes it a little bit academic, but this is like the skeptical thing that we do, right? So like the one of the conspiracy components was, look at the back of his head. There's a bump on the back of his head. That's where he's hiding the pack of blood that he's using to fake and stage the whole thing.
There's blood at the back of the head.
First of all, it's not a packet. It's just normal skull and hair, and that's called normal skull anatomy, right? Everyone has a bump on the back of their head. So
what is that bump called, by the way?
The anion, I think. Is that one?
The
occiput? I think it's the occiput.
I mean, think about how much you have to be willing to change reality to say that guy staged the whole thing.
Well, then he says, it was obviously a fake fall. No, you're wrong.
Oh, my God.
So first of all, it was obviously a real fall, and I could say that as someone who has seen plenty of both.
I've seen falls.
Pratfalls, pseudo falls, and genuine people. That guy was not protecting himself. He fell, and you could hear his head hit the pavement. That was a genuine fall. Then someone said that when you rupture your eardrum, the blood doesn't pour out of your ear like that. Maybe, but it does when you crack your skull. When you get a basilar skull fracture, that's exactly what happens.
That for me, that's what kind of struck me. It's like, wow, I've never seen blood pouring out of an ear, so I don't really know what to make of this. Steve, tell me what do you think?
And the final thing, the guy, they show a close up of the mask. Like the guy's wearing a mask, right? He's wearing like a surgical mask, but you could see 3 straps. And he's like, see that third one? That's a tube of blood going to his ear.
Oh, God.
Yep. So that's what they said.
I said, what I suspected was that, no, the guy's wearing 2 masks. But, just 2 of the straps are the lower ones are one's hiding the other, and you could see 2 going above. And then I watched a different video that was a higher quality. It wasn't somebody's cell phone. It was a reporter's camera. So it was a much higher quality. And the guy's obviously wearing 2 masks. He's wearing a surgical mask over an N95 mask, which is standard procedure, actually. That's what you're supposed to do.
Wow.
So it's clear. So that's it. Every element of the conspiracy took me minutes to deconstruct. Of course, I'm a physician, so I kind of have a leg up on being able to make a good hypothesis. But they just sort of freely make shit up, anomaly hunt, proclaim it a hoax, and just to meet that narrative. When it's pretty obvious, the cops pushed that guy over, he cracked his skull, and the final piece, the guy's in serious condition in the ICU. So what is the hospital lying about his condition?
Here we go, 9/11.
And Steve, another wrinkle, if he faked the fall and everything, still the cops walked right by it. They still were they so convinced it was fake. I mean, one guy tried to bend down and another guy
picked him up. I don't know what they were thinking.
They just kept going.
They may have been under orders just to, here's what you're going to do it, and just make sure you remove anyone from out of the way. They may not have realized how badly injured this person. But
who gives a shit?
No excuse.
If you crack somebody's skull on the pavement, that becomes your first priority.
That's going to be their, but that's going to be their stories. They're going to say they were following orders.
Of course
they are. Following orders, really? Like the Nazi defense?
Like final solution shit. Yeah.
Well,
and when you like really think about the psychology of somebody who would claim a conspiracy here, right? When you think about, it's not just that all of the evidence by deconstructing the video and looking through the videos shows, and the fact that this guy is in the hospital, it's that the face validity is there as well. This is not an isolated incident. There's, every day there's multiple new police brutality images that are videos that are being posted. So it's not like this is an anomaly. Also, there's a high level of motivated reasoning, right? If you're trying to make narrative. And even beyond that, I talked before about this video series that I did with World Channel about conspiracy thinking. It was like a 6-part video series. And one of the topics that we cover is the Sandy Hook murders, and we talk about the hoax that came out about that. And we understand, right, that some people have a motivated reasoning to push this narrative, but then the question is, but why do so many people believe it? Are they all under that motivated reasoning umbrella? And yes, a lot of them are, but also there is this concept that it's too unbearable for certain people to be able to watch an atrocity like that. It like throws their whole worldview upside down when they're like, wait, this has been happening right in front of me. I can't believe this is true. I have to believe that this is a hoax. It's the only way for me to feel safe and comforted. And so there's both sides of this kind of approach. I mean, probably not the architects of the host, of calling it a hoax. That probably is just pure motivated reasoning, and it's
that's just someone on 4chan or whatever,
Do you think that subset, that the amount of people that think this is just too horrific to be true, I need to come up with another conspiracy theory to support it? I mean, do you think that subset is a big group? I mean, I think for a lot of people that believe it fits their worldview of just not trusting authority at all.
I
think that would be the bigger group of people.
I think their
worldview already.
I think they're not binary. I think that, it probably fits your worldview, and it also brings you a certain amount of comfort and in reinforcing your worldview, because then you don't have to deal with the pain of like empathy, right? Because empathy is painful. And you also don't have to deal with the pain of starting the slow process of changing your mind. You get to just double down and become entrenched and stick with all of
Kara,
that.
I totally understand what you're saying as like a psychological explanation, but my reaction to people that whatever you want, you could make an argument that there's delusion in here. Like you're seeing extreme acts of violence against protesters, and there's a difference between people who are looting and rioting and people who are not doing that.
I don't even know if this guy was a protester.
Yeah,
I know. He might have just been a bystander.
I he
was a protester.
I don't know.
He was. Okay.
He went
but there is a new video. Just sorry to interject, Jay. There's a new video that just came up of LAPD. There's a homeless man in like Skid Row, I think it is, in a wheelchair, not a protester, just near where these riot police are standing guard, and they spray his face with rubber bullets. They shoot him right in the face, and he's just bleeding straight out of his face, and he's just a bystander. So I mean, whether they're protesting or not, you're right. This whole thing of like trying to take this idea of there's violence and there's looting and that should not be stood for. It's like there's a lot of historical reason behind why people do it. Add that to the fact that the vast majority of these violent experiences during protesting are actually responses to elevated tension by heavily armed police, right? So peaceful protests that then go bad because the violence becomes accelerated because police are using these crowd control measures that they don't need to use. But regardless of all of that, like there will always be opportunists that see chaos and then go, I want to go steal shit from that store.
Of
and
course,
the vast majority of those people have nothing to do with the organized protest. It's like people are saying like that, you know, like we need to put in curfews. First of all, that's another means of crowd control. All that is saying now the police can arrest you without any provocation.
I don't think they're saying it's not. I don't think they're saying it's not.
Yeah, that's all.
They're escalating.
Yeah.
And
they're not just escalating, they're the fucking impetus. Oh, sorry. Are we allowed to say fuck on here?
Yeah, you can.
We can't do that in the regular
but the don't worry about it. The one of the problems that we're seeing are like, all right, as an example, just this video, we're talking about the 75-year-old man. I watched it so many times. I still flinch when I see him falling backwards. But for what reason did the police push that man back? Why did they put their hands on him?
They're going to investigate that.
Were they threatened by him? Was he making threatening movements?
The question is,
he was gesturing to the ground.
The question is, what did he say before that happened? And somebody online, I think it was Ben, said that he was returning something to the police officers. But does anybody?
It sounds like speculation.
But also, none of that matters.
Could be.
Literally none of it matters. He could be saying,
he was not provocative. He was not.
It doesn't even matter. He could be saying, fuck you, pig, push me to the ground. He has the right to do that.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
When I say provocative, I mean like
what he said, but
physically doing something.
There's nothing he could have said to warrant that reaction.
But Bob, think about like
he's allowed to say whatever the hell he wants to say.
They're not de-escalating. Like the police should be there to serve a lot of different needs, of course, but especially in a relatively peaceful situation, the guy walks up, says something to the police, gestures, and a cop from the back comes up and shoves him and pushes him down. Now, what if, so if that's what you get when an old man goes up and gestures to the ground, what do you get if someone tries to hit a police with a baseball bat? Can they kill him then?
They do all the time.
I mean, but just think about it. They're so over the top with their response. They're not even fighting fire with fire. They're throwing punches when people are gesturing.
Well, of course. I mean, this is the crux of the argument, right? This is the crux of the argument. There is an imbalanced power structure, and there's a code of silence that follows that imbalanced power structure. So when you have a group that is empowered to do what they want to do, not just what they need to do, but what they want to do in order to maintain, quote, law and order, in order to fight a nonsense drug war that disproportionately targets ethnic minorities. I mean, and when we really look back to the beginnings of the police force, and this is something that I think very few people understood, except for people who have studied this stuff scholarly or individuals who are facing this kind of terror on a regular basis and who have read this. I can't tell you how many people on social media, how many of my friends did not know before this week that the origins of the United States police force comes from night watchmen, that officer was an overseer, that these were mounted white militiamen that were empowered by their local governments to round up slaves and either beat them, kill them, or return them to their owners. And that is how we've seen an iteration to what we call the modern police force. And there's a lot of literature on this topic. This is not an opinion. I am not making this up. The police force started as a means to oppress and brutalize Black people in this country. And the evolution and the iteration, if you can even say, has been in a positive direction, has been away from that. It's not like we're moving into a place where the police force is brutal towards Blacks in this country.
We're moving away from it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's always that way. So,
it's very instructive. It's very instructive, but it doesn't mean that it can't be a reformed positive force in society. Obviously we need police, we need policing. And we talk about on the show that's going to be coming out tomorrow, Kara, you mentioned here are the 8 reforms that are being specifically recommended. And are the rest of us were like, so that's not already the case? Like these are such obvious.
Yeah, but only in
right.
Like less than half of the top 100 cities utilize most of these reforms. And they're easy. They're things like de-escalate first, or announce that you're a police officer, or announce that you're about to shoot.
How about
like,
fire at last resort? How is that not 100% followed?
And also remarkable. I mean, Steve, you say we need the police, and clearly we do. But there are certain roles that they fill now that I think they shouldn't be filling. Lots of examples. For example, like 911 calls. If there's like mental illness involved in this 911 call, don't send the cops. Send people that can handle that. You don't need to send them to every 911 call. And I think
I can attest to that personally as a physician. When the police should not be involved in dealing with mentally ill patients.
The sad thing is that our social structures in this country are such that oftentimes the police it's kind of like how jail is the last treatment facility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
police are often the last.
It's the end of the road.
But that's a failure of mental illness treatment in this country too. There's there's definitely a lot of systemic change that we need to make, and hopefully this will lead to that. And then I always look for some. I do think that America will come out of this stronger. I do think that we won't fix all of our problems. We won't eradicate racism in one go.
Oh gosh, no.
Obviously not. This is a process. I do think there are some positive signs in the extent of the protest, the fact that there's so much pushback from I think a fairly broad coalition. I do think that the fact that there's so much can be documented on video, so that when people do say stupid conspiracy theory crap, it's like, nope, here's the video. That's going to speak, I think, louder than reporting without the video. So I do think that we will grow from this. This does feel different. And I know that people have said that before as well. Again, it's not going to be magical. It's not going to happen automatically. And I do hope that a lot of people turn this into a massive motivation to vote in November, because that's ultimately going to be the mechanism of change. Let's face it. I do think that pushback from areas that are long overdue has been happening. Like the generals have basically decided to part ways with the White House, and they said we're de-escalating the military. They are not going to get involved in this. I don't care. And they're just not even communicating with the White House now. They're just making these decisions on their own.
Who is Steve? The governors?
Like Pentagon
the Joint Chiefs
generals,
are basically the Joint Chiefs are basically like, if you want to invoke the Insurrection Act and actually draw our own military, like troops, because right now it's the National Guard, right? But if you want to draw troops against your own citizens, that's on you. This is not an example of a situation.
But they said we're not doing it. You're not using our troops to do this. They're like even going further now. They're not only are they not supporting invoking the Insurrection Act, they're also saying you're not using our troops for this culture war that you're fighting here. Absolutely not. And they are ordering their troops, to I don't know if they're not even stand down, because they're not standing up. But I mean, whatever. I forget exactly what the specific thing that they did was, but they're pulling, making it harder, I guess, for them to be used that way. And then I think they're trying to stand down the National Guard as well, and the governors are pushing back a lot against, Trump trying to, because Trump doesn't have the power, to tell the state militias what to do. The states have that power. You'd have to federalize them, right? Which has been done historically in the past. Yeah.
But I mean, if you think about it, what is the Insurrection Act? It's a means to quell civil war.
Yeah, basically. I know, it's totally inappropriate. I mean, it's like
quelling an armed militia, and that is not. These are peaceful individuals.
It would be a sledgehammer to kill a fly. It'd be ridiculous.
Well, and not just that. It would be one of the last falls of democracy in this country. I mean, that's the really scary thing. Is that we talk about this a lot on the show, that like, our Constitution was developed in such a way to kind of protect a lot of these things from occurring, to protect dictatorial rule, to protect against a strong man in a position of power. But there's always been this kind of we're all in this together mentality, that we all respect the Constitution. And this is the first time we've really dealt with a world leader. I mean, we've dealt with an American leader. We've dealt with executors in the past who have like kind of pushed those limits, but we've never dealt with somebody who like doesn't even respect the office. And that's the really scary thing, is he's testing the limits of constitutionality.
Of course, to see what he can get away with. I mean, look, he clearly doesn't even understand what his position as POTUS means and what his powers are. He just is acting like a kid in a candy store, grabbing for everything and seeing and just whatever. And then if people stop him, but now he has padded himself with such an entourage of yes men and people that enable him.
But he tries, but then every so often it's like we see these waves where people are like, Mr. President, this is beyond the pale. And he's like, you're fired. You know?
Yeah, right.
He keeps losing everybody, even the sycophants. Like he can't keep the sycophants because
he's got to work his way down the competency ladder as people peel off. That's what's happening.
And I mean, should we really be surprised? Like this is a really scary thing is that when you look at the rhetoric that's led up to this and you look at the times when he's supported, lauded, promoted strongmen around the world, who are his like icons and his heroes? Who are the people he speaks nicely about? Duterte, Putin. Like he's, he looks to these men like they are
strong and
like he respects them more than democratic leadership. It's really, really frightening. And sorry, Steve, I know that you want to move away from some of this, but I feel like if we don't point out, because I've been looking at the stream.
Yeah.
One thing that I feel like is really important to point out, and I'll say it once, and then whatever, take it as you will. But I get like my blood boils a little bit when I see people posting things like all lives matter. And the reason behind that is because like, if this is out of ignorance, I think we should just educate slightly. And if it's out of trolling, then whatever, I'm going to ignore you. But if it's purely out of ignorance, I think it's important, like I'm going to use principle of charity, to remember that, of course, the Black Lives Matter movement means that all lives matter. Nobody is arguing against that. The point is that all lives matter. And in our current climate and actually our long historical climate since Jamestown, Black lives have been treated as if they don't matter. I saw a really great cartoon online.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, of the guy laying on the ground with a broken leg, looking up to his friend. Oh, you guys haven't seen this. Yeah. He's got it's like a little guy, these are stick figure people, so they don't have a race. And he's laying on the ground and he's got a broken leg and he's saying like, ow, my leg's broken, get help. And then this other guy walks up and he goes, what about my leg? Like he's like perfectly fine. Wow. And he walks up, he's like, but what about my leg? And like that's what we're talking about. So when you could, if you're saying all lives matter because you don't get that's then there you go, you're educated. But if you continue to say it at that point, I'm sorry, but it's very difficult not to see that as a racial.
Well, it is being actively used to diminish the Black Lives Matter.
That's movement. What I'm saying. Yeah, this is a racist provocation. Right. And at a certain point when you start to, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt for the first second because this is the SGU live stream and I love our listeners and I feel like, come on, people. But if somebody keeps saying that, that's a troll, just ignore them.
But I listened to a very good interview with one of the leaders of the Black Lives movement and Black Lives Matter movement. And his primary point was it's not only Black Lives Matter. Like, don't act as if we're saying only Black.
Right.
It's yes, of course it is that, yes, all lives matter, but we have to specifically point out that Black Lives Matter because of systemic racism, effectively they don't, right? But yeah,
they're treated as if they don't. Our own Constitution says they're only 3/5 of a person. That had to be amended.
That was amended. Yeah.
Of course,
I saw a meme, a similar meme, Karen. It said somebody said when someone says save the whales, it doesn't mean screw all the other animals.
It doesn't mean kill the dolphins. Yeah.
It doesn't mean kill the tuna. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I wanted to just get to because we're past the half-hour mark. I thought we'd do a little bit of COVID-19 wrap and then go to questions. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the other major crisis that's happening. The one thing I specifically wanted to talk about because it came out after we recorded the show on Wednesday, right? It came out yesterday. So it was like the perfectly worst timing because it's going to be 10 days before it'll come out on the show.
Right.
Right. So anyway, but
perfectly bad timing.
Yeah, it's perfectly bad timing.
Yeah, thanks. Don't you know SGU airs on Saturdays? News cycle.
Come on, we record on Wednesday. Get with the program. Didn't you get the memo?
Yeah. So there was the Surgisphere data gathering agency, which was used in that their data set was used for that 90,000 person big COVID hydroxychloroquine study that was published in the Lancet. That showed that not only did it not work, but there was an increased risk of heart attack, of heart problems in those patients. Well, it turns out So it all started with one researcher saying that number that they in the database for Australia is off. It's like it was 81 instead of 78 or something. And that doesn't match the data that I find. So what's the cause of the discrepancy? Now that may seem like a mild discrepancy, but scientists don't like that, right? Because everything should line up. And so they said, oh, we accidentally added the Asian hospital in the Australian data. But that kind of triggered physicians looking closely at the data. And also they didn't, some people were a little concerned that the overall death rate in the database was higher than what other studies have shown the overall death rate to be among COVID patients. And so, the scientists had to scratch that itch, right? They had to figure out what was going on. And then the more they started digging into the original database that was used in that study, the more problematic it seemed. And so they finally just went to the company that provided the database for the researchers. Again, one of the researchers on the study was the president of this company, and said, dudes, we need to look at the raw data here. We need to resolve all these discrepancies. And they're like, no, we don't have to show you our raw data. So then the Lancet ended up retracting a study that used them, and the New England Journal of Medicine retracted the study, including the 93,000, which we talked about on the show, I think, a couple of weeks ago. So it's bad all around. So it looks like...
Is it the only study though, Steve? Because wasn't there a meta-analysis that showed that
but of course the meta-analysis includes that study. So,
sure.
I'll know a lot more next week when we dive into this a little bit deeper, but this is what we know so far. This company's been around since 2008. They say they've been building their ability to... Their claim was that... they are able to get real-time medical data by their pulling data from electronic medical record systems in real time from like 1,200 different hospitals. The problem is they didn't have the time to make these arrangements with all these hospitals. They don't have the staff to manage that database. Like when you look at it, there's like 3 people working in that company. Literally, like there were 6 last week, and now they're only providing 3 names. Only one of them is a scientist. The other 2 are not. And they don't have the infrastructure to do what they claimed they were doing. That's the bottom line. And so nobody now who's looking at it believes them. And it turns out the head of the company is kind of a dodgy character who's done other dodgy things. So it's kind of looking like it was they're treating this like a startup. They're claiming to have an artificially intelligent run database pulling data in real time from hospitals. It's kind of like a Theranos kind of thing. It kind of superficially sounds like the next great thing, but it's probably all bullshit.
Theranos?
Mm-hmm.
Theranos, remember?
Theranos, the fake blood testing thing.
The blonde woman with the eyes and the black turtleneck.
So you're mispronouncing Thanos.
No, not Thanos.
Theranos.
Yeah, it does sound
not
like
Thanos.
Thanos. Yeah. So, I think this one probably got through the peer review goalpost for a couple of reasons. One, that the problem is a couple of steps removed from the actual analysis that the peer reviewers would have seen. And they would have to dig back to the source of the data, the original source of the data, which I think they should do. And I'm not excusing not doing that, but this is also partly because they're trying to expedite COVID studies, right? And this was we're just trying to get this out there as quickly as we can so that we could inform whether or not we should do more studies about hydroxychloroquine, et cetera. And the good news is, though, scientists kept their skeptical eye trained on this. They followed up on apparent discrepancies and they unraveled the whole thing fairly quickly. And when you think about it, it's been a couple of weeks. So that's good, and that people sometimes forget that peer review, yes, there's a formal pre-publication peer review, but when a study gets published, that's when the real community peer review begins.
Right. What we think of as classic peer review is usually only 3 to 4 reviewers,
3 people,
right? That's it's a panel of and it's a voluntary position.
Yes.
So at a certain point,
it's unpaid. I will point out.
They're giving as much time as they can afford to, but they're also running their own labs and stuff. So it's not perfect. It's just enough to pass that first step. step. But you're right. Once people start trying to replicate especially with something really important like this,
you're
really
basically going to
relevant.
crowdsource it. You'll crowdsource it among the scientific community, and they picked it apart really quick once it got published. So that's the good news. So, and then, so anything this company touched is suspect, basically, and that's the way it should be. Okay, so what does this not mean, however? Even if you pull all this data out of all the hydroxychloroquine studies that have been done, the studies still show that it doesn't work, right? So that bottom line conclusion is not affected. Hydroxychloroquine, as far as we could tell so far, and there's plenty of other data, shows that it does not work for COVID-19.
And the negative side effects we've known about since even before this. They don't suddenly change just because something.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. However, this study was the biggest piece of information saying that there was a higher death rate among hydroxychloroquine patients. So we do have to pull that piece back and say, okay, now maybe it's a wash. Like maybe the safety, it is safer than this study implied, but it still doesn't work. Right. So
sure, but we do still know that there's a there's a risk of cardiac issues.
Yes.
Yeah, but whether or not they lead to death.
Yes, you're correct. But I'll tell you a concrete result. When this study was published, the WHO stopped all of their clinical trials on hydroxychloroquine over the safety concerns, and now they restarted them.
Resumed.
Now that study's been retracted. So it was enough to push it over the line,
Yeah.
Steve, who stopped the trials?
The World Health Organization.
World Health Organization.
The correct answer is yes.
Yes.
Oh, right. Yes.
What's his name?
I hear they're on first. Yes.
What's the name of the guy?
Second base.
All right, so I'm seeing some questions come through.
But hang on, before we go to questions, the final point was the real horrible thing about this.
Did you see that? How he did that, Kara?
Hang on, is that the piece I was sort of building to was, of course, what's happening now is that this is being used as evidence by the right wing that the whole anti-hydroxychloroquine thing is a left-wing conspiracy.
Of course it is.
Even going as far as saying, and I've already seen this on my own blog, saying this company was just invented to attack Trump. No, it's existed since 2008, and they are fraudulent probably, but it has nothing to do with Trump. It's like sort of a completely independent thing.
It's so amazing to me when you talk to people who don't live in the US, right? Who aren't in this bubble, who read about these kinds of weird conspiracies that are like, the whole COVID-19 thing. It's all about, COVID-19 was created in a lab in order to, make Trump lose his, and people are like, how narcissistic is this country? They're like, we have people dying here in my country. We don't give a shit. We don't care about Trump. It's like amazing that people really, really can take it back to that place.
That's true.
Conspiracy theories are so fascinating.
Read the book.
What's funny? What's funny? Science, unlike so many other groups and organizations and efforts and whatever, like science is built on proving itself wrong more than it is proving itself right in a sense.
You can't we don't think you can prove anything right.
Right, exactly.
That's the basic assumption is that you actually reject the null hypothesis. Yeah. All you can do is say whether or not something isn't.
But you see this. I loved reading that article and hearing about the fact that they walked back the thing that said that the heart trouble thing. That's like science in action.
Yeah.
And who said that? Other scientists.
Other scientists.
And science. I like to say we because I feel I am part of the science community. We have the balls to admit when we're wrong and tell other people that they're wrong because the whole effort is larger than all of us. Science is more important in a sense than all of us as individuals. But oh my God, I'm so fucking pissed off right now. I really am. I'm so angry. Everything that's going on in my reality pisses me off. But science is such an honest endeavor. It's such a noble endeavor. And the fact that any political party would use science in its normal functioning and delivering the truth to people, they'd use that against science and use that against other people. And of course, they're a political opponent to say the whole thing's a conspiracy. Screw yourself.
Scientists have done that since the beginning of modern science as well. Like, let's be clear, science is an amazing idea. Like, that's what we have to keep remembering.
Yeah.
Like,
it's an
science is an incredible method, and then a bunch of people use it, and people can be horrible. So there are plenty of examples historically of scientists having massive motivated reasoning, scientists being ideologically driven in such a way that they're blinded by their own ideology. And then there are amazing examples, you're right, Jay, where the machine of science or the methodology of science brings that to light. And that's really important. But let's not kind of ignore or pretend that there haven't been long periods of history where science was heavily colonial, where science was heavily sexist, where science was heavily racist.
Of course, I know that.
And
just like any other organization, we've talked about this idea, like there, when the internet came around, and then all the communities started to gather on the internet, the science community, the skeptic community, and every other community that virtually exists out there that is willing to use a computer, use the internet to get together, and everything was great. And then we all found out every one of these communities, including the science and skeptical communities, have misogynists, have blah blah blah. All of these
people, basically.
Yeah, they're people. Yeah. So people can be awful.
So I get that, and you're totally right, of course, Kara. But and I'm not trying to paint science. Science is an ideal in a sense. It's a thing we reach for, and it's
self-correcting, which is great.
It is. I think it's a beautiful system that we have to respect, but of course it has to be maintained just like everything else.
Well,
I just don't like the fact that it's used. I just, let me finish this one thought, Steve. I just hate the fact that the thing in our reality that delivers the goods, as Carl Sagan said, science, like nothing else delivers the goods like science. And anybody bastardizing it and using it, subverting it, subverting it's the perfect word. I take a physical and emotional offense to that, where I want to explode.
It can be infuriating. But I frequently have to point out that skepticism, what we're doing, scientific skepticism, simultaneously is sort of promoting science as a set of methods and an ideal, and criticizing constructively the current practice of science.
Yes.
And some people, they don't get that. We do both. Like this, you're a cheerleader for science, or anything the scientists say. No. Read my blog. I mean, I've written thousands of articles criticizing how science is currently functioning.
And that's so important, Steve. It's in many ways the difference between science journalism and science communication. It's as science communicators, we can often be accused of being cheerleaders for science, because that is a part of what science communication is. It's advocating for the process of science. But that's why it's so important that there are trained and specialized, which is why it's so sad that a lot of science desks have closed. But trained and specialized science journalists, they're not beholden to like the method of science. They're basically just there to read science and to write about it. And so there's a lot of good critical science journalism out there that we as scientific skeptics read.
I mean, Kara, it's our job to call bullshit wherever we see it. I will that's why I turn on my own government on a dime when I see bullshit. I'll turn on a scientist for a bullshit study on a dime. I've had to reject heroes that people I've come to
to admire and respect.
Yes, absolutely. People, right, Bob? I mean, but I will turn on you on a dime if you turn your back on reality. And we have to, and that's one skill set, man. I'm 50. I'm going to be 52 next month, and like if I've developed any skill set in my life through my intellectual pursuits, it's my skeptical toolbox and my ability to switch gears instantaneously as soon as better information is there. And that includes turning emotionally and intellectually on people and institutions or whatever. You go the wrong way. Like Google is a great example. Google used to have, do no evil in their subline. That was their thing. That they're not the same company they were 20 years ago.
It's kind of like how the Learning Channel or TLC used to be called the Learning Channel. And then they're like, this is disingenuous. We should probably
that's like Kentucky Fried Chicken changing their name to KFC, right?
Before we go to questions.
So disappointing when I realized TLC sucked. I had such high hopes for it.
So just a teaser for not the show that's coming out tomorrow, but the next week's show. I'm going to give an even more dramatic example of science correcting itself. So just look out for that on next week's show.
Cool.
Happy birthday, Larian.
Yeah.
Oh,
54?
hey, happy birthday.
Yeah.
I didn't get you anything.
It's in the mail.
I'll make it up to you.
All right, we'll go to questions.
All right, so here's
question.
the deal. No, wait, hold on. Whoa.
Slow your roll there.
Yeah, we're doing the test, Steve. We're giving people the first SGU game. We're doing it.
Yeah, let's do that.
I'd like to do that before we get to questions because I want to.
Yeah.
All right, so let me.
Well,
set
that was
the
my
stage.
question. Is the game ready?
Yes, let me set the stage. So a listener named Frank, I'll see if Frank gives me permission to use his full name, is a software
Frankie?
developer. Yeah, I know,
Jay,
right?
I'm sorry.
Anytime.
You squandered your chance to use that name.
That's his
Sorry,
real first
Jay.
name is Frank. So anyway, so Frank,
Rizzo?
Ian, and I can't remember. Frank has a co-worker partner.
Ernest.
I'll get the names again. We're
What?
going to be doing this
Nothing?
for a while. But the bottom line is
Internet's cracking up right now, by the way.
Frank had some software and so now he's customizing it and helping, we're helping him develop it, whatever, we're giving him our feedback. It's not like he doesn't know what we need. I just said, this is the things I needed to do first. So this is a test of the software. We're going to ask you to join us. It's a real quiz. It's for fun. The questions are just for fun, but they're real questions. We have real answers. So it's going to be multiple choice. So let me tell you exactly what's going to happen before we get there. We're going to give you a link. You're going to go there, and then we're going to initiate the test. The page will automatically refresh, and it'll start showing you the quiz questions. You pick the one pick the answer that you want. We're using the honor system. We're only going to give you about 20 seconds to answer the question because I know some people will not be able to help themselves but try to use Google to
machine?
get it correct. But it doesn't really matter, especially right now, because it's only going to be judged by country on the country level, right? So
interesting.
Our results.
Well, isn't there going to be a massive overrepresentation of like the U.S. and then the UK?
Well,
it's all percentages. It's all percentages.
Oh,
So a future version of this game will be that you could, if you choose, make an account, and then you could track your successes throughout the multiple quizzes that you take, and then we'll have leaderboards and all sorts of stuff. It's all coming. This is the very beginning. So first, keep in mind that a couple of people donated a significant amount of time to help us do this and are continuing to do it. Please do not want to see anybody say anything derogatory in the chat. We are debugging this software during this test. This is for fun. So just stay positive, right? This is all for fun, and people are donating their time to deliver this to us. That's number one. Number two, please feel free to give us feedback. There's a link at the end of the quiz. You'll see a link on there to give us feedback specifically about the game. We already know there's 100 things we want to do with it, but we really want to know, was it usable? Did you have fun? Were you confused anywhere along the chain? That's it. So let's start this. So Ian, could you please jump on and give everyone the details?
Okay. So I'll be posting the link in the chat right about now. I'm going to pin it for everybody. We'll wait till people have it loaded up.
Now, SGU, you guys feel free to join the game.
Oh, us too.
Yeah, it's darkenergy.games/SGU.
No, I'll post it in our chat too.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Make life easier.
darkenergy.games/SGU. So then you click the blue button, join game, and you'll see that it says waiting for game to start.
We got about 200 people in so far.
Wow.
Yeah. Please help us test it out, guys. You'll have fun.
I'm in. I'm writing a program so 10,000 bots. Also,
if you're on mobile, you may not be able to hear us, although you may be able to see the stream as well if it's embedded.
Now, keep in mind, you can only use 2 devices per IP address. Now we did that because some people might want to take the quiz on one device and watch the stream on another. It's also there too to keep it so some smart ass can't go in with 5 computers and game the system. Whatever, again, this
so
is
mine
just
says waiting for game to start.
Yes,
right.
Ian's going to start the game. Ian's going to Ian's picking the questions.
People are still trickling in. We have about 450 people in so far.
Nice.
Great.
Let's give it a couple minutes. Maybe, we could answer a question
I think
if you
we
want.
could start without. Can't people just join as their?
No, they can't.
No.
I think they can't. So we have to
interesting.
wait for everybody to
one more
basically
minute.
get in there.
Well, let's
So this
answer
is
a
exciting.
question.
60-second countdown.
Yes.
All right, well, let's do this. Evan, what are the numbers behind you?
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's get to the numbers this
I know what
week.
they are.
because I've actually used this before in a very, very, very early episode of SGU. I think it was the first year, maybe year 2. So like 2006. So early on. Those people have an advantage. We have the number. Can you see from there?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's number is that, guys?
10.
Yes. And that
11.
1.
1. And that one?
5.
And that one?
2.
25.
And the last one?
50.
Yeah.
I know this game.
Can we say
you,
this
Karen.
is an American-centric puzzle?
Absolutely. It is 100% an American-centric puzzle.
Yeah.
And there have been some correct answers. There were correct answers on our Discord chat. We'll give the win to Skepta Librarian, whom checks us out every week.
She's
Thank
awesome.
you,
She's a
Skepta
patron,
Librarian.
by the way, and she's awesome.
She is.
Thank
She got it
you.
correct. And Daryl Giona, maybe. I wrote it down. Your name went by too quickly. I think you were onto it. I'm not sure if you actually answered it. I saw Steve Wand answered it, and maybe a few other people have already answered it. This puzzle, this is the sequence of coins in order from smallest to largest, dime through a 50-cent piece.
Yep, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
So dime,
I wouldn't have
penny,
got that.
nickel, quarter, and then half dollar.
Yeah.
Is that what we call them? Half dollar?
Half dollar,
Yeah, $50.
Kennedy,
And it's,
$50.
Make those?
I'm not sure if anyone's able to Google it and came up with it. I tried Googling it, and the sequence did not come up in a search. It came up with other random things, so that was nice. It was a little Google proof. And there was an extra clue in there for you. I made the number 1 more of a copper color, so if you notice,
That's right, copper.
That one stood out. And,
That's right.
so that was the built-in clue. So that is this week's puzzle.
That was cool, Evan.
Enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed it. Who knows what'll happen next week?
All right, Ian, how many people?
It is a whiteboard.
We have 647, so
Let's
it seems
do
like
it.
it's trickling in. Well, I just posted it in Discord, so give the.
Let's wait till we get to 666 and then go.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I'll
Please,
stop.
let's do
One
that.
question.
So
Should
right
we do
now,
that?
guys,
Oh.
I believe we have more people watching the stream than we ever have had before.
Cool.
You guys are awesome.
Yeah.
Represent.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
great. So,
Thank
and
you.
this is awesome.
Seriously.
Now, one thing that might happen, guys, is that when
Might
we
get
run
wet.
the game.
666.
All right, let's do it. The problem is that we might be overloading the server. So that's one thing that could fail the game today.
Sure, that's how you crash systems, right?
But this is all part of our test. This was all by design. Frank
There you go.
moved over to a more robust server, and he'll optimize his code as we give him reason to.
We love you, Mr. Vizzo.
All right, do it.
All right,
well,
let's
just
do
one
it.
consideration is that Facebook lags about 20 seconds behind reality. YouTube less so. Mixer is sub-second, and Periscope is who knows. So we're going to give you a little bit of time to answer. So as soon as you see the questions change, everybody immediately answer. Don't wait for response. From
Watch the game page right now because we're going to do it very soon.
So here we go. Anybody? Any last second people? 5, 4, 3.
I'm
2,
excited. This is fun.
1, open.
All right. Which surface area would be covered if our lungs' respiratory tissue was unfolded? You only got about 20 seconds.
Oh, like how large is the surface?
Oh, I see.
So, Ian, you're saying that because Facebook is behind, we have to give a little more time to
Just
let
a
those
little
people-
bit, just 20 seconds, but they should be okay. All right, we got 440 answers in thus far, so it's popping up. Everybody seems like they're answering quickly.
I used to know this from 3rd grade anatomy.
I
Oh
don't know, I
gosh, and it
just
just went out of my head. And
All right, so I clicked one of them and it turned blue. That's what you should see.
Yeah.
a light blue or of
And
a
then-
teal.
And then you'll see at the bottom of the page waiting for the question to be closed. So as
With
soon
a
as
ton
Ian
of people
does that,
haven't answered yet.
With a hypnotoad-like blinking light,
Right.
making me stare at it and want to do things.
Oh, you can't refresh. I'm pretty sure if you refresh, you don't get back into. the
yeah,
game.
don't refresh.
Sorry, y'all.
Yeah, that's the one thing that we'll talk to Frank about.
So put that on the page. Don't refresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you lose.
We got about
Refresh.
600 questions. I think 5 more seconds. 5, 4,
Just a few more
3,
seconds.
2 more seconds. Yeah.
1, closing.
Here we go. So now what you should see is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. All
Got
right.
it.
So who got it right? I'm seeing that I got it correct.
Not me.
No, I got it wrong.
Evan, you pick what I picked, the biggest one?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
picked
did.
the biggest one too.
I assumed
I-
this was right.
I knew it was tennis court related. What? Should I not say anything right now?
No, that's fine. No, we're talking. That's the answer.
Oh, because you saw the answer.
The answer is 80 to 100 m squared, about a third of the about a third of the size of a tennis court.
African or European?
All right, so now I'm deliberately delaying a little bit to give the Facebook people time to catch up. But now what Ian will do is Ian will move on to the next question.
Thanks, Ian.
Right, here we go. Opening for answer.
So we won't see statistics until the end of the whole thing?
That's right.
The end, yes.
What percentage of mass does our sun take up in our solar system?
Percentage of mass.
I will tell you guys this, that these are the correct answer is very close to the absolute correct. I didn't want to put in a bunch of decimal points, okay?
Of course.
Rounded to the nearest whole number.
No, not the Jeopardy
We have game show music.
All right, sorry.
Are we allowed to use that? 8 seconds.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
How about this one?
And we're going to have George Hobb make us some skeptical answering questions. Music.
Yeah.
Wow, chicka, wow.
No, that's taken too.
Jay, how many questions are involved today?
5.
Well,
All right,
one question in 50
3.
pops.
All right, 600 answers currently tracked.
Good enough. Move on.
Go ahead, do it.
I'll take S words for 800.
You got 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Close.
Bingo.
Ian, how many people are logged in?
700.
Woohoo!
Yeah, let's just have a cutoff. Once we hit 600, we just move on.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, how did you guys do?
To keep it moving.
Yeah,
Killed
99%.
All right,
I missed it again.
The
That's easy.
the absolute correct answer is something like 99.8%. It's almost.
Well, that's what
100%.
threw me off.
Yeah, me too.
I answered 90.
Me too, Evan.
The sun
Great
dominates.
minds, Evan.
Thank you, Kara.
We're awesome at being almost right.
Even with Jupiter.
Right. We think alike in a lot of ways. Some ways we don't, but in a lot of ways we do.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
Yeah,
does that include the Oort cloud?
Our solar system, Bob. Anything that's included in our solar system.
There's billions of those damn things.
Yeah, but they collectively they weigh nothing.
Yeah, they're tiny.
All right, next question is active.
Thank you. Ian. A day on the surface of Venus, a solar day, guys, a solar day takes how many Earth days?
Oh, I think I know this one.
So
Trixie false.
One solar day on Venus takes how many of our Earth days?
How about this one?
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, yeah. Drew Carey won't come after us with a stick for that one.
Oh, God. All right, so sorry.
Why don't you just play the happy birthday song?
Yeah.
No, that one you can do now.
You need to find music from a game that's discontinued, like from 1959 or something.
I think things have to be like before
75 years
1920s.
old. I think. Yeah,
it's just
75 years.
Okay.
I think is the cutoff.
Yeah.
This is cool.
Except the happy birthday.
This is just the beginning of a very long
Jackpot
relationship.
from 1974.
I'm like, there's a thing, you know how like when you play spades, you can go nil and you're like betting to get all of them wrong. That's what I'm
almost
doing.
600
Shoot the moon. That's right.
All right, let's do it.
Oh yeah, we're in
Get
good
those
shape for that.
answers
Kara.
in. 10
We're
more.
perfect
5
so
seconds.
far.
5, 4.
I get nervous with countdowns.
2,
I think the countdown doesn't really help anyway, Ian,
That's
because
okay.
Facebook people are delayed.
It doesn't matter. It's just part of the drama. It's part of the game show
I
drama.
got one right.
Yes. Good job. So, you know, it's funny, Ian, you'll see as the admin, I put some other interesting notes in there about Venus, if you want to read some of that.
Oh, I saw some notes.
Like words it rhymes with. And
No, I just, I added in some other trivia stuff while we're talking about it. Can
right.
you see that?
Not right now because it's the other question. Let me open up the new question.
So Jay, you can't change your answer once you've answered.
That's correct.
Ooh, so this is this is like
intentional.
chess. You touch the piece.
That's intentional, Steve.
Next
What is
question
a
is
group
open.
of cats called? A group of cats. Is it called a clouder, a sneak, I can kill you but I won't, or a throng?
I think we're giving people too much time.
Yeah, well, it's because there's a delay. It's all about the delay.
Bit of a test, yeah.
Yeah, Frank, Ian, and I will talk about like, how do we handle the delay? And I haven't even really thought about it till
We
today.
could just force people to one platform just to be conscious of it. I mean,
Yeah, but right now we have almost 700 people on YouTube. We have about 350 people on Facebook, and then some other sources.
We could use YouTube as the default.
Yeah,
or
I think
whatever.
Yeah, because you don't have to have an account to use YouTube, which is nice.
Correct.
All right, let's do it.
All right, here we go. Closing the question.
If you want to watch Cobra Kai, you have to have YouTube. Ready.
Yeah. That was good. I like that. I watched the whole first season.
Rumor is Disney might be picking it up.
Now check out our results, guys. Let's see who won.
Damn.
So
I got a clouder of cats. Come on, a clouder of cats.
No, I don't.
I thought a sneak of cats.
Oh yeah. That's a word you use every.
Cool.
It's a totally cromulent word.
So Colombia, guys. Colombia, Japan, Mexico, and Estonia won. Those countries won today. Good job, guys.
That's awesome. I love Estonia. I mean, I love all those countries, but Estonia's got a special place right here.
Is that like our age
we have
that
another
we'll end up
question.
getting at the end?
It says that we have one more question, Jay. There's 5.
Oh, but I'm seeing the results now.
Oh, maybe this is like Final Jeopardy or something.
Okay. Let's take it back from Estonia.
All right, go ahead. Let's see what happens.
This is our Walter.
Go ahead.
Warren Beatty moment.
We're testing.
The wrong Oscar.
Everything that we do here helps Frank.
Frankie.
I'm sorry, I can't. Jay and the word Frank is like.
I know, it's so triggering.
It's one of my joke names that I use. It's because of Frank Rizzo from the Jerky Boys. You kidding me?
Those of us that have known you for 30 years, Jay, we know that.
Open your ears, jackass. I know.
The main things we know about you.
That's gonna be on your tombstone, Jay.
Yeah. What are you gonna say?
Hey, what do you say here, Sleppy?
Here lies Jay Novella, a guy who loved the Jerky Boy. I mean,
guy.
Also
get those answers in.
His best friend Frankie. All right.
All right. Question is closing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I like this one. Some of the other answers were funny.
Yeah, the other answers were good.
Whoa, wait a second.
Colossus.
What happened, Bob?
That's a
I got it wrong.
No, that's wrong.
ENIAC, right?
Yeah, I thought it was ENIAC.
It wasn't Colossus.
Hold
Jay,
on now, hold on. Now, this was the one I knew that Bob was going to get all up in arms about.
So therefore,
I did some.
Wait.
Read what the question is, Bob. It was the first digital
electronic
computer. It was. Did the answers come out?
Colossus from the movie?
No, it was Colossus existed. It's on Wikipedia. I just checked. I double checked. Because
Wikipedia is always right.
Because I thought it was ENIAC.
It was very good.
I
It's a
thought
well-designed question, Jay.
Yeah.
It's a well-designed question and a good set of answers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that totally threw me.
Jay, that's not what I'm coming up with.
Freaking way.
All right. Well, I'm perfectly happy to be wrong.
You're wrong.
I'll show you the first.
Here it is. I got the page open right here. It's Wikipedia. The title is computer. I scroll down to it gives you a list and it says right here
It's the first electronic digital computer. Right?
Oh my God, Evan, you have one of those?
Oh, I love it.
So much fun.
So cool. I'll let you borrow it.
It says here, Colossus, the first electronic digital programmable computing device, was used to break German ciphers.
Programmable. ENIAC was not programmable, I don't think.
But I said digital and programmable.
No, you didn't.
No, you said digital electronic.
Electronic. You didn't say programmable.
And you see how people do things wrong on quizzes? Now I have to make sure that I'm. I thought I wrote that. I mean, I was hurrying. Nope. I know, but all right. But more important than that,
I'm gonna write
is that Colossus actually predates ENIAC, and it is actually the correct answer when you say what was the first.
Well, if Colossus predates ENIAC, then it would still be the correct answer.
Yeah, but the question is, when people say, what was the first computer? It's a very difficult question.
It's too ambiguous. It's too ambiguous, yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
What do you
abacus?
mean,
I mean, right.
So,
right.
To draw a line in the sand, we're talking about a digital device.
Yeah, and whether it was programmable or not, if Colossus predates ENIAC, then Colossus would be the right
here we
answer.
go. But here's Wikipedia. The Atanasoff Berry computer, first automatic electronic digital computer. I mean, so yeah, this is in,
But it's saying that that's the first automatic one.
And ENIAC was the first electronic general purpose digital computer.
Yep.
But if Colossus predates all of those, then the answer is still Colossus.
Yeah,
Jay,
I think electronic digital computer itself is too ambiguous.
Jay, much like the Lancet, I am retracting my praise for you in this question. It was poorly constructed.
What's but Bob, the one you just read?
Afraid or ashamed.
What was it called?
I tease because I love
a Tanasoff Berry computer. ABC.
Well, what year did that? What year was that?
47.
What year was Colossus?
No, unlike the wildly famous. The ABC's priority is debated among historians of computer technology because it was neither programmable nor Turing complete, unlike the wildly famous ENIAC of 47.
Regardless of any of those little distinctions, though, was it before Colossus?
I think
because all of that is moot if Colossus was still first.
Right, but Colossus in my mind is still from that movie.
Yes, or wasn't there a bad guy called Dr. Colossus?
Colossus as a real thing.
But I could be wrong.
For the sake of moving on,
Whopper for that reason. Whopper
doesn't matter. Estonia still won.
Right, it doesn't matter.
Estonia.
So for the sake of I cannot wait to meet your dog. All right.
Love it, Matt Killer.
So this is cool. It's a good experiment. I felt that this question had enough to argue and everything, but I think the devil in the details here is that we have to be able to say, when people say what was the first computer, we have to add to it the first digital computer, the first electronic computer,
programmable and general purpose. Colossus was not general purpose. It was a focused purpose computer.
That's right.
It was a decryption. It was for decryption only.
So for the show next week,
you guys.
let's come up with that list, right? So for the show next week, let's take a deeper dive.
All right. So the way that
don't all chime in at once.
A little
deeper.
Sorry,
that was face was for Killer, not for you, Bob.
All right, so now I'd like to get, so please guys, at the end, there's a link there to give feedback, or you can email us at info@theskepticsguide.org to give us feedback. We're going to be making improvements every week. And just to get you guys ready, maybe as early as next stream, we will be able to run a legit science or fiction live with you guys. If not next week, the week after that. Yeah, but we're developing it. It's this test was great. Guys, we had over 600 people successfully take a test.
Yeah, it didn't crash or anything. That's great.
That's great first run, Jay.
We should do a few questions, even though we're going to go a little bit longer than we usually do since we
that's okay.
Didn't do any questions.
I'm answering the questionnaire.
So Frank, thank you. And thank your team for doing this. We're going to continue to be working with those guys. And my last thing I'm going to say is please let us know if you're interested in us making a persistent game where you log in and you keep your stats and all that stuff. I think that would be a lot of fun because we can have leaderboards and everything. And one very last thing, I want to thank the patrons who on 2 occasions behind the scenes helped us pre-test the game. We did some usability testing and a little bit of load testing.
Guinea pigs.
So thank you, patrons, for doing that.
All right, so make sure you're sending questions right now because this is the time when we're probably going to see them and start answering them.
Yeah, we're ready for take questions.
So somebody was asking where the name Killer comes from.
Yeah, Killer.
Well, look at him.
I mean that's a ferocious beast right there.
He's always been really small. He hasn't really grown much since when I first got him. He weighs about 10 pounds, and he's just really sweet. And was from the first minute I met him. So of course I had to name him ironically. And yes, he does look like Falcor. I hear that all the time.
Yeah, he does. Yes, Falcor.
Sagan was getting jealous of
never-ending story.
Oh, where's my dog?
The first time
2 dogs. I want my dog.
Come here, Steve, say something so I can
miss
Sagan.
Hi, Sagan.
No, I didn't. He was named Sagan before we got him. That's part of the reason why we got him. Right?
That's amazing.
And Sagan's super sweet, but also super destructive, from what I hear.
Yes.
Aw.
Steve, who is Sagan's best friend?
He loves everybody. He's a good boy.
Give it up. My dog Lando is Sagan's best
friend.
Oh
yeah, sure.
I'll be leading a news item about dogs tomorrow.
Oh, good.
You're going to want to tune in for that. Oh, Bob. Molly, we let me miss my.
All right, let's take another question.
Somebody was asking, Skeptibrarian was asking, of all the interviews we've done on the show, which one is your favorite?
Interviews?
I can't say my favorite because I'd really have to think hard about it. But Rusty Swikert, who when he explained to us what it was like strapped to the rocket and what it was like when the engines turned off and the ship zing went back to full size because the ship got squished down from the thrust. That was horrifying and amazing to hear from him. Remember, his head went forward and almost got cracked open on the dashboard in front of him. That was an incredibly fun interview, man. I loved it.
I mean, Christopher Hitchens' interview was off the hook.
Oh, that was amazing. That was a singular moment. For me, it was two. I'll say two. It was Dean Adele, especially the time I got to interview him live because I got to finally meet him. He was certainly my hero as a boy growing up. And also Walter Isaacson. We had on who I really like that interview. It was a great interview, but also it took me like 2 years to try to nail that interview. So it was like this long, laborious thing that finally came to fruition. And when it happened, it was so happy. Oh, and honorable mention, Jimmy Carter, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I was not here for any of those. Personally, I really enjoyed it. It wasn't for SGU, but it was for Nexus. Last year, I had the opportunity to do a Q&A with Mary Roach, who's my favorite living science writer. So that was really, really fun.
For me, it was all the ones you mentioned were wonderful, but I got to throw out James Marsters' Spike on Buffy.
Yes.
I was a little boy.
Yeah, he was
fantastic. Always loved him on Buffy, and
super sharp.
He claimed that he listens to the show, so I mean, I'm just going to assume he wasn't lying and believe that. That made my month.
Don't you guys love how dogs just like stare into your eye? Killer is he does this all the time. He's just like.
There was science in that. They studied
10
that.
minutes.
Yeah, they've studied that. It's like a very calming effect. There's something significant going on with the dog.
And my little guy, he's so
stare
good at
into you.
contact.
Hey, Ian, Frank said close the sign up. And Frank also said he's not 100% sure the stats are correct.
Okay, good to know.
Which is great because this again, like we got to test
the great Estonian conspiracy.
I know, right?
This time didn't it end up being Colombia?
Well,
Colombia
it's all 20%.
than Japan.
Yeah, but they were
you're
the
right.
same-
You're
they're
right.
matched.
I didn't want to read that. Colombia, Japan, Mexico, Estonia. I love
So
that.
someone asked in the chat what's going on with Yellowstone Park in the United States.
Something happened? Don't tell me now.
Wait, no. There's
super volcano.
There's earthquakes happening. It's not uncommon for
okay.
Yeah,
for
Yellowstone
earthquakes
is
to happen
earthquakes
there.
all the time.
Yeah,
California, guys. Come on.
We don't have anything to worry about. We're not going to get
Yellowstone.
a mantle breach or anything.
Yeah,
Thinking Yosemite. Oh, okay. But like, isn't Old Faithful is there? Like, isn't there all sorts of like interesting kind of geological activity in Yellowstone? Why'd it get really quiet?
I don't know.
Oh, sorry. I'm replying to people. I'm chatting. I'm texting.
I was checking my email because Frank was sending me some info, but all right.
I don't know how to close it, so it's fine.
How about another question?
Let's take another question.
Okay, so speaking of conspiracy theories, one question came in. Gain of function research has been showing up in my COVID-19 conspiracy theories. Do Steve or the Rogues have any knowledge about what gain of function research is?
I don't know what that means. What's gain?
I know what the term means scientifically. If we say something like I, for example, have been involved in research on a specific mutation of a sodium channel that's called a gain of function mutation because it makes the sodium channel act more active, not less active. So, but that's a very, very technical, application of that term in research.
Wow.
I have the sense that it's being applied in a slightly different way, and I haven't heard about it, so maybe we'll have to dig
What's
into
the word,
that.
Kara?
Yeah, we'll dig into it for a future show, maybe gain of function research. So, what is there a context to that?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Not particularly. I mean, we could ask their Discord member. We could ask if they have a link to a particular conspiracy theory.
All right, so shall we move on?
Yeah, another question.
Another question. This one, maybe it's a little too broad, or at least too much of a deep dive to get into. But opinions on Common Core, basically. Oh. Yeah, I know. When I read about it, it says it's awesome. Everyone seems to hate it where I live, is what this person is saying.
I haven't looked up the statistics lately on Common Core.
I know a lot of people who love Common Core.
The results started to come out, I don't know, like in the mid part of the decade, like 2015. They started looking at it. I haven't looked lately though to see what
So just very quickly, it's basically this, there's 50 states in the United States. The idea is that every state has their own standards for public school education. This is just an attempt to align them. It's being used in some political quarters as saying that it's going to be imposed upon the states, but this is not true. It's the states voluntarily agreeing to become part of it together. This is a state initiative. It's not a federal initiative. You could then, of course, ask, well, are the Common Core standards good standards? And that's obviously that's a huge question because you have to go in topic by topic, but they're generally good and they're certainly better than a lot of individual states. So the question is, do we really need to reinvent the wheel 50 times over in terms of coming up with education standards, or can the 50 states agree on a common core of standards that they use together?
You can always do more than that. You can always go above and beyond that.
Yeah.
Hey, I saw a good question in the feed, Ian, that I remember coming across, and I've saved a few articles on it. There's I can't remember who asked it, Benjamin Wilson, I think. There's new articles circulating that COVID-19, the reason that it might be so much more severe for certain people is that it can also become like a circulatory problem. So you've been seeing this, right, Steve? That what we've called from the beginning a respiratory condition, that if we then secondarily classified it as a circulatory condition, that it would explain apparently a lot of the more severe symptoms.
It looks like it's heading in that direction, and in the hospital we test people for hypercoagulability secondary to COVID-19. Also, they're starting to see some autoimmune diseases in young kids who've had COVID-19. So we're learning about aspects of this disease that go beyond just the acute respiratory syndrome that we're seeing.
Yeah. So although it might express as a pneumonia and did in the bulk of the cases, there are certain people for which it actually expresses as
there have been strokes,
the COVID
young people getting strokes.
Yeah. All those things we've heard of. Okay. Interesting.
This next question is a question seemingly for Jay. Is it possible in an online conversation to figure out if somebody is already too deep down a conspiracy rabbit hole that it's not worth engaging?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out. You really just got to chit chat with them and see what their reaction is. The most important thing is, do they listen, and will they change?
Open-minded?
Will they change their mind? Will they say something like, "Oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting. All right," and move on from there as if you said the truth, or if they're just fighting, and they're impenetrable by the truth can't penetrate or sink in.
So you can tell when somebody is disingenuous.
Yeah, that's the primary criterion for me. Is, are they being intellectually honest?
Yeah.
Or if they're not being intellectually
having a conversation and learning from each other, or not.
And it's the question really is, where's your threshold, right? Where's your point of no return? And you have to sort of develop that for yourself in different contexts. Like because I like to give people charity, benefit of the doubt, give them a chance. But at some point you have to say, beginning. Okay, chance is over. I'm moving on. I have to shut this down because sometimes, again, this is like the sea lioning, right? Sometimes the purpose is to suck up all of your time on this fruitless endeavor of being fair and charitable to them, and you have to cut your losses at some point.
That reminds me of that. I was mentioning, I don't think it made it to the show because I think we were offline, but I was saying I retweeted a Black woman who was talking about her frustration with the archetype, like being thought of as this like loud, angry Black stereotype, and the blowback she gets from that. And then there were these people commenting like, are you saying if a white woman and a Black woman say the same thing, they're going to be perceived differently? I think there needs to be more research on this. And it was all these people responded like, dude, here are hundreds of studies. Like, this has been research. And that's the frustrating thing, I think, when somebody doesn't take time to educate themselves. And then they put the burden of like, oh, you've made a claim. Where's your evidence? And it's like, this is in the literature and it's a well-established claim. Like at a certain point, you can't keep arguing about well-established claims. You have to move on to something. Like it's kind of like a burden of proof thing when it comes to the argumentation process.
Hydrogen's the first element. Prove it.
I know. Like,
what?
Come on.
Maybe one final question is, will the Nexus live stream be able to be viewed in non-real time for those of us in wacky time zones?
Yes, right Jay?
Yes, right, Ian?
Yes, right.
You guys saying that you were hoping that it would be up for a certain amount, maybe like a month or weeks. I mean, but you haven't determined that, but there will be a time scan after, a time scale after where you can watch it.
Definitely.
And scrub.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, Nexus. So we updated the website. We're starting to put up the speakers right now. Right now we have Bill Nye and Richard Wiseman up on the website. We're adding more pretty much daily right now. Because it's a one-day conference, we're not going to have this exhaustive list of people. We're only going to have, I think, about 8 to 12 people.
But a lot of fun stuff happening in between. It's not just going to be a series of talks. We're going to do like 20-minute talk. Then we're going to interview the person who just gave the talk. Then we're going to have questions, open up to questions. Then we'll have 15 minutes where we do something else. We'll have a little entertainment or a little us, goofing around with each other or whatever. And then we'll go on to the next talk. So it's going to be broken up into a lot of shorter segments because it's online. I don't think you can just stare at a screen and listen to a talk for 40 minutes. In fact, there's good research that shows that you can't. So it would be silly of us to ignore that research. You have to. Do you guys know what the attention span is? What the average attention span is?
Sorry, what were you saying,
minutes.
Steve?
Yeah, like what?
It's 20
I was watching
minutes.
Bob. Bob was doing something.
It's 20 minutes. So that means that at least every 20 minutes or so, or more frequently, you have to re-engage people, right? You can't just, you have to re-engage their attention, and do something interesting.
I use one of those boat horns usually and just that'll get their attention.
Yeah, so Friday night, July 31st is the opening to Nexus, but really it's a game show. Yeah. We're gonna have Bill Nye will be there, Leanne Lord will be there, Andrea Jones,
Leanne,
Roy.
Yeah, Andrea Jones, Roy will be the contestants.
Right.
Me, Steve, George Robb, Brian Wecht will be the quiz givers.
The game masters.
The game masters, as I said last night in our meeting. And then August 1st, all day will be the lectures and the private talks. Like George is doing something on Ringo Starr that I don't want to give too much away. That's going to be really awesome. And then we're going to close off the Saturday night with some type of comedic set. We're finalizing the details, but we're getting a lot of fun people to do this with us, and I hope you really enjoy it. Go to nexus.org, NECSS.org. Please join us, guys. We need your support.
All right, so we're done?
Yeah, we're done. I had a great time. I'm so excited.
Camera's off. Finally, it can take. Oh, they're still there.
That'll hold the little bastards for another week.
That's what Perry said one night after recording the show. Oh my
that's
God.
from a famous gaffe.
That's
right. The Simpsons did it, and that was taken from an actual incident that happened.
Like the 1950s. It was a children's radio show, and the mic was still live. So that'll hold the little bastards till.
Oh my God!
Wow.
Head back to work. God. Guys, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My favorite part of the week.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things
It's
I
just
do
so
all
much
week.
fun.
Bye, guys.
I never want to stop doing this. Bye, guys.
Oh, good night.
Oh, why did I leave? Oh, I
did you?
I still see you.
I was in the bathroom.
Skeptic's Guide to the Universe
Kara,
is produced by SGU Productions, dedicated to promoting science and And if you would like to support the show and all the work that we do, go to patreon.com/skepticsguide and consider becoming a patron and becoming part of the SGU community. Our listeners and supporters are what make SGU possible.